everybody, welcome to another video. My name is Infiniti and today I am back with another Continental knitting stitch tutorial. Today's tutorial will be covering the fan and feather stitch, otherwise known as the old shell stitch. This is a very simple lace pattern, and I know you're looking at this and you're saying, Infiniti, that does not look simple, but I promise it is. It is a 4-row repeat. And it's really great for beginners, I personally think, because it just uses simple maneuvers and you get this very nice textured stitch. Before we get started, I do want to have a quick word. This video is brought to you by my supporters over at Hey Craftapreneur. Hey Craftapreneur is my monthly pattern club, which includes my knitting, crochet, and centro knitting machine designs. Each month, members are given access to at least 2 of these designs, as they are either added to the library or updated, and they will have continual access to my entire written/video pattern library for as long as they are members. Membership also gives you the title of Super Crafty, because that's what you are. Members are also given complimentary access to most of my crochet or knitting courses that are published on the website. For example, I recently published a step-by-step crochet course which will walk you through all the terminology, discussions about gauge, and the actual mechanics of the craft. It is a self-paced course that is usually purchased individually, but because you are monthly or quarterly supporters, you get access to it totally free as long as you're signed up for the club. The support I get from Hey Craftapreneur allows me to continue to operate this channel and publish the tutorial content that you've come to know and love. So, if you want to support me and make cool stuff, as I'm sure you've seen under the community tab here, then consider heading over and signing up today after the end of this tutorial. Alright, let's dive into the instruction. Alright, stick around to the end of this video and I'll tell you exactly what I would use this stitch for. I apologize for the little ad blurb, but here on this channel I only promote things that I've either used in my studio or have complete faith in. And if I can't have complete faith in my own programs and products, then what else can I have faith in? So anyway, more about that later on in the video. Without further ado, let's begin. For today's project, I will be working with Lion Brand Kobu yarn. And I thought that it paired perfectly because it's a thinner yarn, and I'll be working on some 4mm knitting needles. And I'll be working in this lovely shade of green because why not use complementary colors? Alright, so to begin, you're going to want to cast on in multiples of 18. Now, you can add additional stitches on either side for selvage, or if you're going to do some kind of edging or trim on this stitch. So for today's sample, I did only cast on in multiples of 18 and I did no edge stitches. So I have 36 stitches here along my sample. And I have a little stitch marker down here. After I completed the first 4-row repetition, I wanted to make sure I remember what the front of my work looked like. So not necessary, but it's just a little pro tip in there. Alright, so for our first row, once you've cast on, you're simply going to knit all the way across. Okay, got my yarn connected, and I'm going to knit each stitch along. If you're brand new to knitting, let alone continental knitting, I do have some beginner knitting tutorials back on my channel if you want to check that out. I'm going to knit each stitch along. Nice and loose. Sometimes when working repetitions, I find it really helpful to put a stitch marker between my sections of that repetition. That way I keep up with stitch count a little bit better, especially if I'm working with edge stitches or something a little more complicated in the center. Right, and coming to the end of this row, knit my last stitch. Right, and your odd rows will be the front side of the work. Okay, so now we're going to turn our needle, and for this next row we are going to simply purl each stitch along. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the front because I have no edge stitches in my sample. Alright, we're getting to these last few stitches here. And there we go, purl that last stitch. Alright, now that we have done that, we are ready to move on to row 3, which is the most complicated part of this pattern. This is how we start to get these ridges of our fans and feathering stitches. Now, what we are going to do is immediately jump into our repeat. So we are going to knit 2 together 3 different times. So knitting 2 together is essentially a decrease, and there's no need to panic. It's a very simple method. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our needle. We're not going to work into this first stitch as we normally would. We're going to come over here to the second one, which is why I recommended you work fairly loose in the beginning, because sometimes if you work too tight, it can be difficult to maneuver your needle in here to otherwise work your stitch. So we're just going to yarn over and knit those together as though we were knitting through a single stitch. And that's all there is to that. We're gonna do it again. Yarn over and just knit as we normally would for a total of 3 times. Okay, now that we have done that, we're going to move on to the next part of our repeat, and we are going to yarn over and knit 6 different times. So this is another one of those stitches with a lot of give and take. We're going to yarn over, so that means we're going to bring our yarn from the back over the needle to the front. Then we're going to insert our needle into the next stitch and knit. Okay, there's 1. Going to do that again from the back over top. Knit the next stitch. There's 2. I would also do those yarn overs fairly loosely, because in the next row we'll be working into them again. Four, 5, and 6. Okay, now we're going to knit 2 together 3 more times for this repetition. So here you can see I got a little tight there. If you happen to accidentally make your stitches tight, I like to insert my needle purlwise and just kind of twirl it around in those stitches, and then I can go back and just work it like I need to. 1, cut that pretty tight. But even pros make mistakes. There we go. 2. And 3. Alright. And now I can work my second repetition. So again, we are going to knit 2 together 3 times. Two, 3, Okay. And now that we've done that, we're going to go back into yarning over and knitting one. So from back to front, over the needle, we're going to then knit the next stitch, yarn over, there's 2, yarn over, there's 3, yarn over, there's 4, yarn over, there's 5, yarn over, and then there's number 6. Okay, and across the final 6 stitches we are simply going to knit 2 together 3 times. So, 1, 2, and this last pair here at the end, that makes 3. Alright, and this is the end of row 3. Now we are going to move on to our 4th and final row of our repeat. So we're going to turn our needle and we are going to knit each stitch along. And 3. Eventually you'll come along to these yarn overs, and it's just, you have to fiddle with it a little bit to work your needle tip into those, but as long as you're careful so you don't pluck them off of your needle, you should be in good shape. Alright, and coming up on these last 2 stitches, just knit them off. And if I straighten it out here on the needle, when I turn this back on the right side, this is what the pattern begins to look like. Now, you don't get instant gratification with this stitch, so you won't really see it show up in the first 4 rows of the work, but as you continue to work them up, then that's where you get to see the pattern. So I'm going to work this up in this color because I think this is a fun combination, and I'll let you see what that looks like in this green color in just a moment. Alright, and this here is the fan and feather stitch in 2 colors. I just like green here on camera, so I really wanted to see how this stitch would look made up a little bit in this kind of limey green here. I don't know what to call it, but this is just a good combination anyway. This stitch would look so good in a shawl or a wrap, or if you're making like a little light scarf. Obviously, depending on the type of yarn you use will I don't know if that made good sense. Obviously, depending on the type of yarn you use will affect how stretchy this thing is. So I used a regular long tail cast on for this for a change, and look at how much it stretches. So it's paired again with this Lion Brand Kobu, which is a cotton blend yarn, and it's typically pretty stretchy. I usually use it in scrunchies and things like that. But yeah, you know, this is very versatile. I think it would also look good in a throw. When I did initially swatch this stitch, I used a 4-weight medium yarn, and I wasn't too impressed with it, but I think I was also just kind of annoyed with it, and so I ripped it all out and started over with something a little bit thinner. I think the thinner yarn kind of accentuates the texture in it, and you can truly see that effect going down the fabric. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Again, I hope you consider becoming part of my micro community over at Hey Crafterpreneur. It supports this channel and ensures that I'll be able to keep it going beyond May of this year. If you haven't heard the news, I will post the most recent channel chat at the end of this video, along with a playlist of all of the knitting stitch tutorials that I have done on this channel. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, happy making. You're still here? Cool. When you get ready to finish this stitch off, all you have to do is just do your regular bind off. I actually finished this with a stretchy bind off, which is pairing really well with how the flow of the stitch is going, and it gives me even more stretch to the fabric if I really wanted that. But again, the long tail cast on did just fine as well.